What could make a king so cursed? The dogs would lick his blood when he died. Ahab was a king with more gold than he could count, and a palace no one could touch. But his wife, Jezebel, wanted more. You'll watch a king cry like a child over a garden he could not have. You'll watch Ahab's wife frame an innocent man for murder. You'll watch dogs lick the king's own blood the second he died. If you are struggling to control your desires, then this story is for you. Samaria was the capital of the kingdom of Israel, and Ahab had just become its king. 6 kings had ruled Israel before Ahab, and every one of them had led the nation further away from God. Ahab was about to become the worst of them all. Ahab's father, King Omri, had built Samaria into a strong and wealthy city. When Omri died, Ahab took the throne, and he wanted to make his kingdom even more powerful. To do that, he married a foreign princess named Jezebel. She came from Sidon, a wealthy city to the north, and her father worshipped a false god named Baal. This marriage was not just about love. It was a political deal meant to bring Israel and Sidon closer together. But Jezebel did not come to Israel quietly. She brought her god with her. Ahab built a temple for Baal right inside Samaria, and inside that temple, he set up an altar where the people could worship this false god. Word of this reached a prophet named Elijah. Elijah walked straight into Ahab's presence and gave him a warning nobody expected. As the Lord lives, there will be no dew or rain in these years, except at my word. With that one sentence, Elijah was telling Ahab that the God he had rejected was about to punish the entire land with famine, and only Elijah would know when it would end. Then Elijah disappeared. God told him to hide near a brook called Kerith, and while he was there, ravens brought him bread and meat every morning and evening. When the brook eventually dried up from the drought, God sent him to a widow in a town called Zarephath, and there Elijah stayed while the famine spread across the entire kingdom. Back in Samaria, the drought was destroying everything. Crops failed. Animals began to starve. Ahab grew desperate to find any patch of grass left in the land, because if the last of his horses and mules died, his kingdom would lose its entire army. So Ahab called for his palace manager, a man named Obadiah, and split the land between them, each man taking one direction to search for any water or grass still left. For more than 3 years, Ahab watched his kingdom collapse beneath the drought, yet he still did not remove the temple of Baal or lead Israel back to God. Instead, he searched everywhere for Elijah, the man who had announced that the rain would stop. Obadiah was secretly loyal to God, even while working for Ahab. While walking his assigned route, Obadiah ran straight into Elijah, the very prophet Jezebel had been hunting to kill. Elijah gave him a direct order. "Go, tell your master, behold, Elijah is here." Obadiah was terrified, worried Ahab would kill him if Elijah vanished again before Ahab could arrive. But Elijah promised he would stay, and Obadiah went to deliver the message. When Ahab finally faced Elijah in person, he did not greet him as a prophet. He accused him instead. "Is it you, you troubler of Israel?" Elijah answered without backing down. "I have not troubled Israel, but you have, because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals." Then Elijah issued a challenge that would decide once and for all which God was real. He told Ahab to gather all of Israel, along with 450 prophets of Baal, at Mount Carmel, a tall mountain that could be seen from a wide stretch of land. Ahab followed Elijah's command and sent messengers throughout the kingdom to summon the people there. On Mount Carmel, Elijah stood alone in front of the crowd and Baal's prophets. He proposed a test. 2 altars would be built, one for Baal and one for the true God. Each side would place a bull on their altar, and whichever god answered by sending down fire, that god would be the real one. The prophets of Baal went first. They cried out, danced around their altar, and even cut themselves for hours, but nothing happened. No fire came. Then Elijah built his altar, and to make the test harder, ordered the people nearby to pour water over the sacrifice 3 times. He prayed a simple prayer, and fire fell instantly from the sky.
Before we continue, these videos takes hours and hours to make. Please like and subscribe and comment which country you are watching this from.
Burning up the offering, the wood, the stones, and even the water surrounding it. The crowd fell to the ground and shouted, "The Lord! He is God!" The prophets of Baal were seized and killed at the valley below the mountain that same day. With Baal's prophets destroyed, Elijah told Ahab that rain was finally coming. Ahab went to eat and drink, while Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel and prayed for rain 7 times before a small cloud finally appeared over the sea. Within moments, the sky turned dark and heavy rain poured down, ending the drought that had crushed the kingdom for over 3 years. Ahab had now watched fire fall from heaven and rain return at Elijah's word. He had been given undeniable proof of who the true God was. This should have been the turning point where Ahab finally chose to follow God. Instead, Ahab went home and told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the killing of her prophets. Jezebel responded with a threat sent directly to Elijah. She swore she would kill him within a day, just as he had killed her prophets. Elijah, terrified, fled from Samaria into the wilderness alone. While Elijah was running for his life, a new threat was rising against Ahab from a completely different direction. A king named Ben-Hadad ruled over Aram, a powerful kingdom to the northeast, and he marched his army straight to Samaria's gates with 32 allied kings behind him. Ben-Hadad sent a message into the city demanding Ahab hand over his silver, his gold, and even his wives and children. Ahab, trying to avoid war, agreed to the terms. But Ben-Hadad pushed further, demanding his men be allowed to search the entire palace and take anything else they wanted. This second demand was too much even for Ahab, and he refused. Ben-Hadad responded with a boast, sending word that his army was so massive it could turn Samaria to dust, with nothing but the handfuls of dirt his soldiers carried. A prophet arrived at the palace and delivered a message that surprised Ahab completely. God intended to hand Ben-Hadad's massive army over to Israel that very day, not because Ahab deserved it, but so the whole nation would understand that the Lord was still God over Israel. Following the prophet's exact instructions, Ahab sent out a small group of young officers first, and Israel's forces routed the Aramean army completely. Ben-Hadad's advisors believed they had lost because Israel's God was a god of the hills. So the following year they planned to attack again on flat ground at a city called Aphek, believing that terrain would guarantee their victory. Once again, a prophet came to Ahab beforehand and told him Israel would win this second battle too, so that Ahab would know the Lord ruled everywhere, not just the mountains. Israel struck again, killing 100,000 Aramean soldiers in a single day. The survivors fled into Aphek, but a city wall collapsed upon 27,000 of them. Ben-Hadad escaped the destruction and hid inside an inner room. Ben-Hadad's remaining officers advised him to approach Ahab as beggars, wearing sackcloth with ropes around their heads, a sign of total surrender. When they came before Ahab pleading for Ben-Hadad's life, Ahab made a decision that would later cost him everything. He called Ben-Hadad my brother, brought him up into his own chariot, and made a peace treaty with him. Ahab released a king whom God had appointed for destruction, choosing his own political agreement over God's judgment. A prophet came to Ahab and told him a made-up story. He said, "Another soldier told me to guard a prisoner, but I let him escape. Now I must die because I failed." Ahab replied, "Yes, that's fair. You deserve the punishment." Then the prophet said, "That story is really about you. God told you to kill Ben-Hadad, but you let him go. So now you will die instead, and your people will suffer because of your decision." Ahab went back to his palace angry and upset, refusing to accept God's warning, refusing to accept what he had just been told. Not long after, Ahab's attention turned to something much smaller than kingdoms and armies. Near the palace in the city of Jezreel stood a vineyard belonging to a man named Naboth. Ahab wanted the vineyard for himself, to turn it into a vegetable garden next to his palace, and he offered Naboth a fair trade or a fair price for it. Naboth refused, explaining that the land had belonged to his family for generations, and under Israel's law, he was forbidden from selling his inheritance permanently. Ahab took this rejection extremely hard. He returned to the palace, lay down on his bed, turned his face away, and refused to eat, sulking like a child over a piece of land he could not have. Jezebel found him this way and asked what was wrong. When Ahab explained, Jezebel mocked him for being so weak. "Do you now govern Israel? Arise, eat bread, and let your heart be cheerful. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth." Jezebel then wrote letters in Ahab's name, sealed them with his royal seal, and sent them to the elders of Naboth's own city. The letters ordered the elders to proclaim a fast, seat Naboth in a place of honor, and bring in 2 worthless men to falsely accuse him of cursing God and the king. The elders obeyed exactly as instructed. Naboth was dragged outside the city and stoned to death based entirely on lies invented to steal his land. When Jezebel heard Naboth was dead, she told Ahab to go take possession of the vineyard. Since Naboth no longer owned it, Ahab went down to the vineyard immediately to claim it as his own. Waiting for him there, however, was Elijah, sent by God to confront him at the very place the murder had made possible. Elijah's words to Ahab were devastating. "Have you killed and also taken possession?" Then Elijah pronounced judgment directly. In the same place, dogs had licked up Naboth's blood. Dogs would also lick up Ahab's own blood, and his entire family line would be wiped out because of the evil he had done. Elijah added a final judgment aimed at Jezebel specifically, declaring that dogs would eat her body within the walls of Jezreel. For once in his life, Ahab responded with genuine humility. He tore his clothes, put on rough sackcloth, fasted, and walked around subdued instead of proud. God noticed this humility and sent Elijah back with a modified message. Because Ahab had humbled himself, the disaster planned for his family would not happen during his own lifetime, but would instead fall upon his son's generation. 3 years passed with peace between Israel and Aram, but Ahab still had unfinished business. A city called Ramoth-gilead was supposed to have been returned to Israel as part of the earlier treaty with Ben-Hadad, and it never was. Ahab decided the time had come to take it back by force, and he asked Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah to the south, to join him in battle. Jehoshaphat agreed, but asked Ahab to first seek advice from a prophet of the Lord before marching to war. Ahab summoned around 400 prophets, and every single one of them told him to attack, promising certain victory. Jehoshaphat, unconvinced, asked if there was any other prophet of the Lord they could ask. Ahab admitted there was one more, a man named Micaiah, but confessed he hated him, for he never prophesies good concerning me, but evil. He first repeated the same message as the other prophets, promising victory. But Ahab, sensing something was wrong, demanded the truth. Micaiah then described a vision where all of Israel was scattered on the hills like sheep without a shepherd, meaning Ahab would die in the coming battle and leave his army leaderless. Furious, Ahab imprisoned Micaiah, but ignored the warning and marched toward Ramoth-gilead with Jehoshaphat. To escape the prophecy, Ahab disguised himself as an ordinary soldier, while Jehoshaphat entered battle wearing his royal robes. An Aramean archer randomly released an arrow, and it struck Ahab between the joints of his armor. Wounded, Ahab remained standing in his chariot throughout the battle until the sun went down and he died. After the battle, Ahab's blood collected in the bottom of his chariot as his army returned home. When servants washed the chariot at the pool in Samaria, dogs licked up Ahab's blood. God's judgment spoken through Elijah was completely fulfilled, proving that every word the Lord had spoken came true.
These videos takes hours and hours to make. Please like and subscribe and comment which country you are watching this from.